You know, growing up can be very difficult at times. And there were parts of my growing up years, and when I say growing up years, I'm not really talking about kindergarten and first grade and 3 years old and 8 years old. More referencing, the ages of 11 or 12 to about 18 or 19 years old. And there was actually, I can even say it went beyond that. There was a phase in my life that lasted just about several decades that I really wasn't comfortable with who I was. I didn't like who I was. And there are occasional times where that makes a minor reappearance even today. But there are certainly moments in my life that I wasn't very comfortable in my own skin. And before I go on with this message, I wanted to let you know that I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, a summer cold. I don't know what you want to call it, and it's affected my voice. And out of nowhere, I will cough uncontrollably. So if I get a fit of coughing, if I have a moment of coughing, please pardon me. I have some candy up here to help transition through some of those periods. So now that's out of the way. There were moments that I didn't like the way that I looked. I didn't like the way that I dressed. I didn't like my hair. I grew up in the 80s. In the 80s and the 90s, and I remember, there were times that I wanted to be like Sonny Crockett. He was so cool. I mean, just lose the car, lose the Testarossa, just his clothes, the way he looked, the way he presented himself, the way he talked. I just thought, man, if I could be like him, I would be it. I would have no problems. I would have no worries. I would have no troubles. And to be quite honest, I would even settle for Rico Tubbs. I'm talking about the Miami Vice characters. Rico was cool. He looked like my friend TJ Belleville, and I envied TJ. TJ was dark like Rico, had nice hair like Rico, funny, and he talked, but he was also quiet, kind of a quiet presence, but also very funny. And so I thought, well, if I couldn't be Sonny Crockett, I'll just be Rico Tubbs. Be awesome. I could be like them. I remember one time there was a haircut that came in style. I don't know from where it got its name. I know that punk music was starting to hit its stride back in 83, 84, 85. And all those guys pretty much looked like the rock and roll guys. I mean, I'm talking about the big hair bands. They didn't have big hair, but they had long hair. And the punk was short hair, kind of like a Billy Idol. If you remember Billy Idol. And it was called the punk haircut. And I had pretty much worn my hair the same from the time I was like in kindergarten all the way to like 7th grade. I didn't want to stray too far outside of that box. Excuse me, there it goes. Excuse me, there it goes again. I didn't want to stray too far outside of that box. I didn't want to do anything too drastic. I wanted to stay in kind of where I was because I was comfortable with that. Now, it might be a paradoxical. I might not, at times like who I was, but I also didn't want to stray too far from what I was. But I thought, I'm going to go through with it. My mother, for the first time in my life, I went to a beautician. I went to an actual hairdresser. It was a hairdresser and not a barber. Up to that time, I had always gone to a barber. And so now I was going to a hairdresser. And sat down and told him what I wanted. And he said, well, you want to do it this way? And I looked at it, and I was like, I'm not so sure we want to do that. That might be a little drastic. That wasn't in my vocabulary at the time, but that's what I was thinking. That's what I was feeling. I remember it as I'm standing here. I can remember it. I can remember it very vividly. And I said, maybe just change it a little. I didn't want the full punk effect. Maybe we just deal with the back of my hair. Maybe if we just cut that. And I went, got the hairdo, went home, and I could not wait till the next day of school, because I wanted everybody to say, oh, what an awesome haircut. I wanted everybody to say, man, you look great. You look awesome. I want to be that presence that walks in the room, and everybody's ready to give it the undivided attention that I deserved. I've been to a hairdresser. So I got my hair done, and I got on the bus, and a pretty little girl, whose name was Kathy, I was waiting for her to say something. She said nothing. I went to homeroom. No one really said much. I went to first period and second period. Still no one. I thought maybe lunch and recess when we have a little more time to talk. Still nobody said anything. I made it through the whole day of school, got back on the bus to go home. There was Kathy one more time, and I was just like, if I have to fish for a compliment, again, not my vocabulary back then, but this is how I felt. If I have to fish for a compliment, I want to know that this hairdo looks awesome. I want to know that I look great. So I said to Kathy, how you like my hair? I got a haircut yesterday. And she said to me, well, it looks the same. And that was so, I don't want to say demoralizing, because I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't ready to call it quits. But it was such an astonishing reply. But really, as I look back, all I did, the only change that took place was there was like 5 or 6 or 10 hairs that stood up straight in the back. So it really looked just like I just had a messy hairdo for all intent and purpose. And I wanted that approval. I wanted that attaboy, or you're handsome. And all of us, to some degree, and I know there are some of you out there that are telling yourselves, I don't care what people think about me. Even you. When I say everybody, I mean everybody that's listening to this. Everyone, to some degree, cares about what people think. Now, it may be at different levels. On a scale of 1 to 20, at times mine might be 18, mine might be 5. But there's a register. And yours may be a 5 or a 4 or a 9 or a 15 or a 20. We all care. When we come to this passage today, Matthew chapter 5, if you want to turn in your Bibles or turn on your tablets or phones and look. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Now, just for a moment, if you will allow me, I want to step aside and talk about Bible translations for a second, because there's a really good translation of this, and I'll explain it in a moment. The original Bible was written, if you look at the Old Testament, was written in Hebrew, and the New Testament was written in Greek. And so when you're reading an English Bible, you are reading a translation. English was not the original language of the Bible. So they have to look at words and what they meant and try to translate it into the English and what they mean now. And there's different ways of translating. So when you go to the bookstore and you go to Walmart, or at the book aisle at Walmart, or at Borders, or wherever, You go to the bookstore, the Christian bookstore, and you see these shelves, and they're lined with Bibles, and they're all letters like ESV and NIV and NKJV and KJV and NLT and AMP. The list is very long. There are people who come to the Greek in the New Testament and the Hebrew in the Old Testament, and they try to do the best that they can to represent that in the English language. And there are different ways of doing it. One is the exact replica, meaning that it's going word for word. And so you have Bibles like the ESV and the NKJV, New King James, English Standard, and the King James that have done very well, really good about translating it directly. And then you have others that do what's called the dynamic equivalent. And the dynamic equivalent is they like maybe change cubits into feet or meters so people in Europe and America can understand how big a cubit was. Because a cubit was a measure, a unit of measurement back in those days. They will also help us in ways of translating. So it's kind of word for word, but it also kind of goes into today's language and adapts a few. Then you have what's called a paraphrase. And in a paraphrase, they go into the old or into the Bible, and they really try to make it sound like the way you and I speak. And one of my favorite paraphrases, it's good to have all those Bibles. It's really good to have a good exact replica. It's good to have a paraphrase. You kind of get a good idea of what's saying. And it's really easy today to have them all because you can get the apps on your phone, on your iPad minis, on your Android devices, like YouVersion and the Glow Bible. There's all those different apps. And when you look at them, they'll have a whole host of translations from which to pull from. So I wanted to explain that and why, because sometimes I'll just throw out, this is from the Message, or this is from the NLT, or this is from the NIV. That's really where this, why I wanted to kind of step aside and have that small discussion about translations for those who may or may not know. And the Message is one of my favorite. The Message does a great job with the Beatitudes. And the Message in Matthew chapter 5 here says, you are blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the very moment that you are proud owners of everything that can't be bought. Now that reads differently than blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Two completely different, really, but not so much so, because in the paraphrase they're trying to get the meaning behind the text. They're trying to give you a deeper appreciation for what Jesus was saying right there. Blessed are you when you are content with just who you are, because really this passage can go two different directions. It can talk about your personal station in life, and it can also talk about your personal status before God. That's the two ways when you say meek, because when you go and talk about meekness, talk about humility, those two kind of go hand in hand, meekness and humility. When you talk about meekness and humility, it's not something that we really glorify much in today's American culture. In fact, I don't know any culture. I don't know them all, but the World Wide Web has made us a smaller world, a more knowledgeable world, in some cases a more corrupt world, but it's helped us to get a sampling around different cultures in different countries. And if you go to like a book by William Bennett, it's called The Book of Virtues. It was a bunch of fables and stories that have morals that he released back in the 90s on principles, on things, virtues, things that we should desire, like thrift and forgiveness. Those are all things that are virtues if you are a virtuous person. However, humility did not show up in that book of virtues. Humility is a virtue, and that's where we're at today. Being content with your place in this world, because some translators look at it as an economic thing, as in your status, and some people who look at this, some theologians look at it as your personal status before God. And being that we are going through the Beatitudes, Jesus is talking about things like hungering and thirsting for righteousness. He's talking about things like hungering for Jesus, being salt of the earth. So this represents a heart that has been regenerated, reborn. These are people who are followers of God. These are people who are passionate about God. And when you're passionate about God, you also understand your position with God. That without Him, you not only could not be righteous, you couldn't even have the faith to respond. That I have been changed, reborn. I have been saved by the grace of God through faith. None of those are of my own. My faith is not my own. My salvation is not my own. They are a gift. A gift. So when I realize that, I'm humble. Because I can tell you, and I'll probably say this a couple times in this lesson here. I can tell you as I stand before you, I don't stand as one who is righteous because I've done great things, because I've responded to God, because I picked up my bootstraps and I energized myself to be God's son. No. For all intent and purpose, friends, I am the least qualified to be standing right here by my own merits. I am standing here sharing my faith because of the work that God has done through me. That, and it's hard to talk about with humility by pointing to yourself, and I'm not pointing to myself, I'm just pointing to the reality that without Christ, without God, without His work in me, not of my own, that I would not be here. So I am blessed, I am happy, I am in good shape when I am happy with just who I am. No more, no less. I'm happy. That's not to say that there's days that it's not a struggle. There are days that are a great struggle. But I know, even in those times, from where my righteousness comes. The fact is, there are a lot of people who are trying to impress God. It's like finding someone who is just absolutely beautiful, male or female, doesn't matter about gender. And then finding that behind the mask, that there is something there that no one else sees because they're hiding it. And that's what religion is like. Religion would have me stand here and talk about how great I am. Religion would have me boast about my abilities and my talents and my gifts. Religion would focus all the attention upon me. Excuse me. And there's a difference between relationship with Jesus and religion. If you will, turn in your Bibles to Luke chapter 18. Luke chapter 18, and we're going to start right around verse number 9. He also told them this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous. And those people treated others with contempt. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee was standing by himself and he prayed thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector was standing afar off, and he would not lift up his eyes to heaven, but he beat his chest. And he was saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you that this man went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who humbles himself will be exalted, and the person who exalts himself will be humbled. This is the difference between religion and relationship. The Pharisee, who was the religious man of the day, the pastor, the priest, the man on the front pew, the person with the fish on his bumper. Not that that's bad. I got a fish on my car. But he was proud with who he was. Look at what I do for you, God. You are so lucky to have me. You see? This is what I do. This is what I do. This is who I am. This is how I do it. And by George, I'm great. Not really understanding that God doesn't care what's on the outside, that mask. He cares about what's on the inside. The tax collector, and if I could be descriptive, tax collectors were viewed like we view child molesters or people who commit sex crimes today. They had the same opinion of those people like we do of those who have committed sex crimes. They're outcast. They're put off. They're to be avoided. They are looked down upon. And that is not to make light of sin. I'm not making light of sin. Tax collectors were sinners. This one recognized that he was a sinner. He beat his chest. This wasn't just simply, a superficial. He beat his chest. It's how they expressed passion. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. How many of you said that? I don't want to show hands. It's rhetorical. That you feel the weight of your sin. That you feel the weight of your unrighteousness. I felt it. I know I haven't felt it fully, but I felt it. Rather than, you're lucky, I'm on your side. The exaltation there, Jesus, as he finished that parable, remember he said, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. The exaltation comes by recognizing that there's something outside of yourself that there's something outside of you working in you to make you righteous. I'll say it again. There are things that I have thought, things that I have done, things in the past, even recent, that are not good, that are not righteous, that are not holy. It is God who makes us holy. Religion is what sours many people from Christ. Here's a list of things made. The difference between a religion and a relationship with Jesus. Religion says, if I obey God, God will love me. The gospel says, because God loved me, I can obey. You see the difference? Those who are always trying to earn God's respect. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who accept just who they are. Accept who you are. You are not worthy of Jesus. I am not worthy of Jesus. No one is. But he has chosen in his great love and in his great passion and his great mercy, he has shown to forgive us. He has shown love to us. He has extended grace to us. And beyond that, as Paul says, much more. He's extended righteousness. Not only has he made you just, but he has taken your crappy crumbs and given a full buffet that he did. And there are some think, if I just do this, if I just do this, if I just do this, God will love me. No. No. That's religion. You don't do to love God. You do because God has loved you. Religion says that there are good people and bad people. Wrong. The gospel says that there are repentant people and unrepentant people. That we're all bad, me included, but I am repentant. I have accepted the grace that Jesus has extended to me. And I share that as good news. Not as being on a high horse, not as one boasting. I share it as good news. Religion has the goal to get from God. The gospel has the goal to get to God. Religion sees punishments and hard times and these hardships as punishment for sin. The gospel sees hardships as a moment that you can be sanctified, that you can reach sanctification through your affliction. What that means is that you're going to grow in your relationship with Jesus. For those of you who have heard about Job and his friends, they felt that he had done something wrong. You are you are feeling this way because of something that you have done. Rather than seizing those hardships as a moment, as a time to grow in a closer relationship with Jesus. Religion is about me. It's about my performance, about what I can do, about what I've done, about what I'm going to do. The gospel is about Jesus. It's about what Jesus has done. It's about what Jesus is doing. It's about what Jesus is going to do. Religion believes that appearing as a good person is the key. The gospel believes that being honest is the key. I grew up wanting to appear righteous. I can relate to this. And I can relate to the day. I can share with you the day and the moment that I said, I'm just tired of pretending. and then just doing my own thing. There are so many who are keeping up a good front, who, like this Pharisee who went into the temple, was all about what they looked like, how they came across, how they appeared. They wanted the attention. They wanted to draw it from Jesus and look at me, look at what I've done. And all along Jesus is saying, no, don't look at what I have done. Look at who you are. Be honest with yourself. Be meek. Be humble. And you will be the proud owners of everything that can't be bought. The other translation said, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. That's not a blessing of more of wealth. I'm not saying that you're going to get rich, you're going to get homes, you're going to get cars. Blessed are the humble, for they will inherit the kingdom of God. Lastly, religion has an uncertainty about their standing before God. The gospel has certainty based upon Jesus' work. How's your righteousness today? Mine, I can say, on a scale of 1 to 10, mine's probably a 9, 8, 9. How was it 2 days ago? How was it last week? How about 2 weeks ago? I can tell you I went through a patch where it might be 2. Negative. Serious. Because some days we might be doing really well. And other days we might not be doing so hot. Religion is not based upon my performance. Religion is. But my relationship with Jesus is not. My relationship with Jesus is based upon His work that He has done on the cross and that He is doing through us and in us, about us, to glorify Him. Blessed, blessed, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Who went away justified from that prayer? It wasn't the religious man. It was the man who was looked down upon as the worst of all sinners. He was humble. He was meek. He got it. That it's not about him. It's about Jesus. So I want to see, how does this apply to this community? How does this apply to us? We all struggle with identity to some degree or another, with being accepted, with being loved, with being in. And I see that at the store, at the marketplace. I see that with people walking up and down the street. I can see that at the mall, at the Easton, at the Polaris. I can see that in the schools, how we wear our clothes, how we color our hair, what language we use, what music we listen to, and what we drive. That there are people that are influencing and affecting you. Tell me that if a particular singer didn't color her hair fluorescent pink, that there wouldn't be 1,000 other people in a 8-block area with pink colored hair. Tell me, if it wasn't for certain people wearing their pants down to their knees, that there wouldn't be others mimicking them, pulling their pants down to their knees. There is a certain level that we want to be accepted. We want to be in. We want to be a part of it. And we will stop at nothing to get there, to get that attention. And Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Do you hear that? 2 times in 2 verses he said, rest. Come to me. You have burdens? I'll give you rest. Learn from me. Take my yoke upon you. That word yoke is not from an egg. that word yoke is when you have 2 beasts, 2 oxen, or 2 cows, or 2 horses, as they plow through a field together. They put a wooden bar on them, and they work together. It keeps them in sync. It keeps them cooperating together. Take my yoke upon you. Walk beside me, he says. Learn from me. I am gentle and humble, and you will find rest. Because I see an awful lot of people trying to live up to an identity. Either those who are in the world and who are in sin, and you're walking around with your pants down to your legs, flying the F-bomb in Kroger's and in Myers and in Giant Eagle, not caring what child or person is around you, coloring your hair all sorts of colors, not that that's a sin, but you're looking for an identity. You are not pleased with just who you are. I want to be like this person because this person's cool. And I see people in the church who are doing the same thing, playing the same games, taking on an identity of self-righteousness, saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. You're no better off than the person with his pants down to his knees. The answer is in humility, meekness, understanding your place, understanding just who you are and who I am and what Jesus can do through you. I am the last person that should be speaking these things, but it's because of Jesus. I can only point to Jesus. I can only point to Jesus and say, thank you, thank you, thank you for delivering me. Thank you for rebirthing me. Thank you for instilling me with faith. Thank you for grace. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your patience. Take his identity. Accept it. Accept it. Make it a part of you. And when you realize just who you are, you will be the proud owners of everything that money can't buy.